Hello, all you sawdust sucking sons and daughters. My neighbor needs a place to keep his beer cold. So, he went and bought a cooler. But, instead of keeping his beer in it like he should have, they tried to make one of them TikTok air conditioners. You know, where you put the ice in here and you cut holes in your cooler and you put fans on there. It worked, but we'll just say their enthusiasm wasn't nearly as cool as what the air conditioner was supposed to be. So we're going to take his cooler. He repaired the lid with some spray foam, and it's still kind of ugly. He doesn't want it to be ugly no more. And this is not the cooler that would be particularly used for this kind of build, but we're going to go ahead and try it anyway, because he spent $30 on the cooler and he don't want to throw it away. So he's got a cooler. I have some leftover 2x4s and some pallet wood here that I picked up from Ashley Furniture that we're going to go ahead and try to make a pretty cool cooler out of. So, stay tuned. We're going to get this milled up. We're going to make something awesome. So the first thing we got to do is knock off all this stuff that we're not going to be using. We don't need the handles. We don't need the wheels. So we're going to cut all those off with an oscillating tool. And then we got to get some measurements. Now the easiest way I could find to get measurements on this thing was to put two 2x4s on either side, right up against it. And then I had to put a 2x4 on the bottom of it and measure from the table to the bottom of that 2x4. And that gave me accurate measurements on how big of a box I needed to build to set this thing down into. Now you could go about this box in two different ways. You could just build a box around it and make a cooler box that houses this and makes it look pretty that you could haul around in your pickup truck or, you know, to take to family occasions. Well, this fella has got a deck, so I'm going to make this in a deck style cooler. So the first ones I cut to like 36 inches, and the other ones I cut to the measurements that I took the cooler off of, or that I took off of the cooler. So the next thing is to make these 2x4s look, well, less like 2x4s. So I ran them through the planer to get a couple of nice edges on them. And we went ahead and squared up one of the sides. That way we could run it through the table saw to get our final width. So I wanted to make this a little fancier than just kind of a blocky look. So I made up this little jig so that I could draw a curve on it, and we will be cutting that curve out with a flush trim bit. I measured in, I think it was 1 inch from either side, and that's where I placed my trim nails at, and then I could put this piece of 1/4 inch dowel in there and bend it. Now I drew that on a piece of 1/4 inch plywood, that way I could take it over here to the oscillating sander, and that would give me my profile that I was looking for. And then we will take double-sided tape and we'll put it on the 2x4s and hit it with a trim router. If you have a bandsaw, I would suggest using the bandsaw first, or maybe even using the jigsaw to cut away as much of this waste as possible, because this kind of put a lot of stress on my trim router bit. Or maybe I just need a new trim router bit. I don't know. But it ended up working out pretty good. Now you can see the profile that I was looking for. So in the 36-inch legs, I wanted to do a stopped dado. So I had to mark where I wanted the dado to stop, and then push it through a 1/4 inch spiral bit. Now this is a little rough because my spiral bit is shit. You see it ain't even there. That's because it done spun out of the router. But what I did is I started real low and raised the router bit up for each cut. I take a cut on all my pieces, raise it up some more, take a cut, raise it up some more. And that finally brought me to my final depth. Once I got my legs where I wanted them, I stopped cutting those and continued cutting what I guess would be my rails, we'll call them. And once I got those all to the depth I wanted, then I can move on to pocket holing them and getting them ready for assembly. Here's a little tip you might want to notate. When doing things like this and you have multiples, clamp them all together. That way you can sand them all at one time and you don't have to worry about your sander rocking back and forth. It gives you a nice even platform to sand on. Since this deck cooler is going to be sitting on a deck for probably most of its life, I went ahead and used some of Craig's exterior screws. They're blue coated, I guess paint or something, I don't know. But they're meant for exterior use. So I had some 2.5 inch left over from a swing that I had built for my dad. And I figured this would be a good project to use them up on and get them out of my garage. So I figured the easiest way for me to put this together would be to screw the top panel into both of the legs. Then I could put my panels in and get them all seated nice and tight and put my bottom rail and my other bottom rail into place after my panels were in. And this actually worked out pretty well. Once I got the 3 panels in that were the same size, I had to cut one last panel, which was like 2.5 inches. You may be asking yourself why I didn't just do the math and make all the panels all the same size. Well, it's because there's math involved and I didn't feel like doing any math and making a ton of cuts and throwing away wood I didn't need to throw away. So this was quick and easy and still come out looking pretty good if I do say so myself. So just so y'all know, I do believe this is probably going to be my last video of 2023. So now would be a good time for me to remind y'all to subscribe. That way, when I start putting out videos in 2024, you guys don't miss out on those. So hit that like button, that subscribe button, and we'll get back to the video here. So with a couple of taps, we almost have that bottom rail in place. And like I said a few minutes ago, I think it's looking pretty good. But I didn't want to rip my screws out when I went to put the other screws in the bottom, so I went and got some clamps. I put a clamp at the top where it was already screwed in, that way I did not rip them out. And then I could use the clamp toward the bottom rail to pull that in nice and tight. That way it holds it while I go ahead and set my other 4 screws into place. My original plan for this build was actually to go buy 2 more coolers and batch out like 3 of these. That way I could set my stop blocks up and just pop, 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 and just keep everything rolling and knock out 3 of them at one time. I was going to keep one at my house for my dad's little fire pit area, and I was going to put one on Facebook to sell to see how well they sold. But because this cooler was so much different than what is normally used, batching them out wasn't going to work. So I decided just to go ahead and knock this one out for my neighbor, and then here closer to springtime, I'll probably go ahead and batch out 3 of them, keep one for here at the house, and then we'll go ahead and see how the other 2 sell. So you might want to stick around to see how that goes. I'll let y'all know once I get them all done and sold. Now that we have the first two rails and the panels in place, we can go ahead and put the very bottom rail in. Now this bottom rail will be what holds the shelf that I'm going to put in here a little later on. Plus it gives a little bit of stability to the legs at the bottom of this wonderful cooler stand. So since the two front and back panels went so well, I figured we would do the sides in the same fashion. We're going to put the two top rails on the sides, and then we're going to start assembling the panels. Again, with the same size panels, and then one left over that is smaller. We'll just take a measurement off of it, and we'll rip it down and stick that sucker right in place. Now some of the other deck cooler build videos that I have watched actually had built 4 panels and stuck them together. Now I could have done that and used up some more of the 2x4s that I had left over so I could get them out of my shop, but I felt like the use of wood was unnecessary. Especially since when I can do it this way, save some wood and actually save some time and screws, because screws aren't exactly cheap. And well, I think it worked out pretty well this way myself. You might want to build 4 different panels, but I feel like this worked out really well. So I don't know why I feel the need to validate giving this to my neighbor for free, but I'm going to anyways. See, my neighbor's a really good guy. My wife and his wife get along really well. Me and him get along really well. He and my dad get along really well. They come over for cookouts. We go over there for cookouts. And anytime I need something done with my lawn equipment, he jumps right on it. I mean, the man is great at working on lawnmowers. And anytime he needs something done out of wood, he comes over, asks me, I help him out no problem. And that's what neighbors should do for each other. I mean, it's even in the Bible somewhere, I think. Be nice to your neighbor or some shit like that. I'm pretty sure it's in the Bible. But anyways, help your neighbor out. They'll help you out too. So with all the rails in place, now it's time for a test fit. In all the other YouTube videos I've watched, they have the top of the cooler flush with the top of the box, but they're using different kinds of coolers. This one is not built that way, so I need to figure out if it can sit flush or if I need it to stand proud a little bit. So I think I'm going to have it stand proud a little bit. And we're going to do that with this here piece of plywood salvaged from my old miter station. It's a good way to use up this extra plywood, and it's a good way to secure this bottom up. So I put some pocket holes in it, and I measured 1 inch in on all of the corners. So I screwed one corner in, measured 1 inch on the next corner, screwed that one in, 1 inch on the next corner, screwed that one in, and so on. Then I went around and hit all the other pocket holes right in the center of the ones that are in the corners. That way I've got a good secure fit, and the plywood should help to keep the box from bowing in and out, so to say. So this next part might seem a little redundant, considering I spent so much time knocking all the roundovers off of these boards so they didn't look like 2x4s. But I went ahead and I put an 1/8 inch roundover around all of the edges of this thing to round them over again. And I don't care who you are or what you say, this round over is different than what was on the 2x4s. This round over brings everything together and makes it look all nice and uniform. So once that's all done, we can go ahead and start figuring out where the lid's going to go. But before we put the lid on it, we need to put some trim on the top. That way you don't see the exposed end grain from the 2x4s and all the ugly joinery from the 2x4s, and it just doesn't look like a bunch of 2x4s thrown together. So I have some of this leftover pallet wood that came off the nightstand or end table. I guess it was an end table. And it's really pretty wood, so I decided to go ahead and use it and put some miters on it and trim this out so that it looks all nice and pretty from above. I'm just going to use some Titebond 3 and some 1.5" brad nails to secure this in place. It really shouldn't be holding a lot of weight, and because I'm using Titebond 3, it should be water resistant for quite a while. And that Titebond 3 is pretty strong, so once that cures up, then brad nails I don't think are nearly as strong as what that glue is once it gets all dried and cured up. So for the lid, I decided to use that same pallet wood. I cut some 2-inch boards that are roughly 5/8 thick, I think, and just went ahead and screwed them together. Now, because this lid is full of expanding foam, it is wonky in several directions. So the best way I could figure to get this to look like it's hitting flat is to set it down on the cooler and put the piece of plywood and the frame on top of the lid, and then shoot brad nails in from all 4 sides. That should hold the plywood in place to the frame, and then we will screw the lid right to that plywood. And that should make everything look like it's sitting nice and flat, even though it is nowhere near flat at this point. During this project, I realize I am starting to have some problems with my brad nailer. And it really comes into play here in a little bit. But I think I might have to get me a new brad nailer, or at least try some new batteries or a new charger. But anyways, once I've got that in place, and everything looks like it's looking pretty good, we can go ahead and start measuring or eyeballing for some screws. So at this point, I'm not quite sure how deep these panels are going to sit in here. So I want to use some countersink screws to go into this lid. And I have some 1-inch countersink screws left over from my miter station that I got thrown in a coffee can. That's right, I'm old enough to have screws in a coffee can now. Ain't that freaking great? You'll get there, just wait, if you're not already there already. But after getting it all screwed in, the lid sticks, and we are on a roll so far. So here are the panels that I had mentioned earlier. I took a measurement and I cut them just a hair bigger so that they would fit snug in there and not fall down while I was putting the brad nails in. Also, here is the problems with the brad nailer that I was talking about. I have to keep taking the battery out to get the dang thing to work. So I'm going to have to look into either new batteries or a new charger. And these are not genuine Ryobi batteries. There are some I found on Amazon that were 45 bucks for like 2 of them. And I've actually had them for like 1.5 years. They work really well for a long time. I also took this as an opportunity to get out my new block plane. If you haven't seen the video on this thing, I will leave it up here in the corner. And it gave me a chance to play with it quite a bit. I like playing with my new tools. Now you can see in the middle of that lid, I have a 1/4 inch piece of plywood. That is covering up the ugly part that he wanted to get rid of in the first place. That is really all he wanted when he came and asked me about this project, was to see if I had any 1/4-inch plywood laying around just to kind of pretty the lid up a little bit. And we kind of blowed that way out of the water. But I did make sure to cover up all the ugly stuff that he wanted covered up in the first place. And once I had that all covered up, we went ahead and hit it with some Minwax Golden Oak Stain. And I think that is looking phenomenal on this pine. But you can't have a cooler without a bottle opener. So I went in the house and looked around my wife's crap and found this extra bottle opener. I don't know if she knows it's missing yet or not, but she will probably when this video comes out. Hopefully she doesn't kill me for taking her extra bottle opener. And you can't have a lid without having a handle. So I got this handle from Hobby Lobby. It's just a cheap little handle. It looks like some twisted steel or twisted iron. I don't know what you call that style. But it's definitely twisted and it looks like cast iron. So it looks pretty cool on this project. That handle, just like the hinge you see here, is left over from other projects. Now, to get the water out of this cooler, we need to put a tap on the side. And to put a tap on the side, we have to drill a hole. Now, I could have drilled this hole before I stained it, but I wanted the stain in behind the tap. That way, it's more protectant, I guess. So the tap I'm using came off the outside of my shop. I had a hose fixture out there, and it was inside my fence and not real useful inside my fence. Plus, that's part of what made my water freeze last year. So we went ahead and removed that, and I have this PVC nipple to go into the back of that tap. That's why I had to drill a bigger hole. Now we'll use the spade bit to drill a smaller hole that we can run a piece of 1/2-inch PVC into the cooler to let the water drain out. I do have a 1/2-inch Forstner bit, but something just told me that drilling into a cooler with a Forstner bit wasn't going to be very enjoyable. So I figured the spade bit would be more enjoyable than what a Forstner bit would be. I don't know. Anybody else ever tried to drill into a cooler with a Forstner bit? Let me know in the comments. I'd kind of like to know how that went. With the holes drilled, we can go ahead and put the tap together with the PVC and the nipple and go ahead and insert it all the way through to the cooler. And once we have it lined up and looking all nice and level, we'll go ahead and throw some screws in it to hold it in place and shoot some caulk on that bad boy. So here it is, all done in its glory. Now all we have to do is wait for my neighbor to get home so he can come and pick it up. I did add a shelf down here along the bottom. Down here, I made it flush so it looks nice and clean. We got that pop top on here because you got to be able to open up your bottles. You got your spigot over here on the side to drain all your water out, because if you didn't have that, you would have to open this and turn it over. We did add some level feet to it, some metal ones, because this is going to spend most of its time outside on his deck. And I know for a fact his deck is not flat, like not even a little bit really. But at least this way, with the leveling feet, his cooler won't move around. It ain't moving in my shop, so it should be all right in his. Got a nice opening door. I went ahead and I caulked all the way around the pipe on the inside. That way it wouldn't leak. We don't want a leaky cooler. And the brass hinge I had left over from another project. So I don't have any money in this at all. Everything I used was from the plywood, was from my miter saw, my old miter station. And the 2x4s were also from my old miter station and some of the pallets I'd picked up. And the panels are from some of them pallets that I picked up from Ashley Furniture. They were real thin, and this seemed like a good project to use them on. So I've spent no money on this project, and I feel pretty good about giving it to him for free. He's a good neighbor, great guy, so I hope he enjoys it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hit that like button, that subscribe button, and check me out on some future videos. We got a lot of them coming. Alright, I'll see y'all later. Close the door. Close the door. Let the heat out.
Damn, that looks cool as shit. Hell yeah. God almighty. I brought the fan over here. Golly. I just set it to the side.
Yeah, we can lay it on the tree. I'll come over and help you put it on your deck. It's not bad. I mean, I carry it around. I got the dolly over here.
That's fucking cool as shit. I like it, man. Damn. Hell, I don't even know if I want to put it on the deck or put it inside the house. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of... I'll probably put it in the shed. That way nothing will happen to it is what I'll probably do. Cause I don't know how the oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really heavy at all. It's all time.
Yeah.
Except for like the trim pieces here on the top.
Yeah.
Those are made out of some hardwood pallet boards I had left over.
Damn, that looks good, Johnny. Damn. Man, I swear. That looks fucking awesome. You know what I was thinking? I was thinking about that color right there, but hell,
I thought about putting that on there.
Believe me, I was at the house yesterday. I was there. I said, "Damn, what if he stained that?" He probably did because he probably wanted me to pick out my own color. And I said, "That ain't no problem." And I said, "Hell, if you didn't stain, I'll go ahead and I brought." That's what I thought. But hell, that looks good, man.
It's like a golden oak stain.
Yeah,
it looks really good on the pine.
It looks.
I
good.
think it looks great.
Oh yeah.
And that's what Haley's whole bedroom suits done.
And this thing out there is cool as shit, man.
I had that left over from when I took the faucet out over there. So I like, well, hell, I got one, so.
Oh, hell. That's fucking cool, man. And it's like a rustic look.
Right.
You know what I mean? That looks fucking, I like it. I like it, man. I need to figure out, I don't know if I want to stick something on the front or not, but that looks cool as shit.
The Tractor Supply and Hobby Lobby got them stars, like the Texas
yeah,
stars.
and that's exactly what I was just thinking. It's one of the
smaller ones, or you can get them on Amazon too, because I used those on Evelyn's bed.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. That looks good, man.
Well, load it up here.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.